So, hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Fugitive Chefs podcast. Today we have Joachim joining us from Copenhagen. Hi, Joachim. First of all, thanks for accepting on such a short notice and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Furqan. I'm very happy to be here and talking with you.
Yeah. So, Joachim, everybody who comes on this podcast is a difficult person to define because these are all people who are coming from tracks which are not very defined and doing things which are more likely new kind of a job category. So tell us about yourself. Like, what is it that you do? For somebody who doesn't know you, how do you define what you do today?
So, good question. Currently I work with fermentation and drinks. So it's more liquid state fermentation. I'm the head of research and development at Muri drinks, where we make non-alcoholic fermented drinks, blends of different fermentations, infusions, macerations of different products, blend together in no-low alcoholic.
Wow. I think it's one of the biggest newsmakers in the whole, all these new segments of food that are coming up. And I think no-low category is still being finding its way. It's at least known now. People know what they are talking about. But before, I would really like to dive into what more details of how that job looks like. What is that you do on a daily basis? What kind of products does Muri sell? But before that, tell us about yourself. How your closest entry into this industry? Because I still think it's a part of gastronomy, not hospitality maybe anymore. Maybe hospitality uses your products, for sure they do. But the whole gastronomy side of things, food. You come from Greece, if I'm not wrong. What was your first interaction with food?
Yeah, we're very much, as Moody, we're very much connected to the gastronomy, and most of us were coming from the kitchens and not from big companies. So yes, I come from Greece, and first I studied. I have a bachelor on food science and technology in Greece. From young age, I wanted to work with food. I was curious around food. It seemed fun and interesting and wanted to explore more, but I didn't really know all the kind of fields that they exist around food. So the obvious one was to go become a chef. But a very classic thing in Greece is that all the mothers really want you to go to university. So my parents were not very happy with me going to become a chef. And we were trying to find something similar, but in a more academic level. So then I ended up going to study food science and technology that I really enjoyed. And I wanted to continue it a little bit further. And that's how I ended up in Copenhagen to study a master. And I came here to study program called Integrated Food Studies in the University of Copenhagen. But on the same time, I have been working as a cook, as a chef in restaurants around the city. And yeah, that was the first part of the journey.
Yeah. And I was very curious when you mentioned this, because now we are seeing some sort of, there are people who enter food science and technology with a certain mindset, want to get into the industry or whatever. And then there are those who are now chefs and they want to somehow disconnect from the kitchen now, or have an easy hours. And they think, maybe a master's in food science or a bachelor's in food science technology would help. How is it for you? How did you, I understand you had a passion for getting into the kitchen, and you said you had to convince your parents and this route seemed the easier one. Did you not consider, not being a chef after all, with all the, everybody looking at your CV and saying you want to be a chef would be questioning, right? Why can't you just, go for a industry job or something?
Yeah, I wanted to try the restaurants because it just looked very interesting and very fun. And I really liked it. I liked both. Yeah. And that was the hard part, that I realized that I don't want to pursue a career as a chef. I want to try it for a couple of years, but this is not what I want to do in my life. But I want to find a way that I can combine those two, the bit of the scientific approach from the university, but also the restaurant world that was very exciting and fun.
Yeah. And how was somebody, I think I can, I'm a little bit, I find it funny because I can imagine because before I do the job, what I do now, where I get more opportunity to get into science and read through it and not just, try things al ojo, how they in Spanish, just eyeball it. How did it feel with having this degree and then going into a kitchen where kitchen uses science, but then takes it for granted somehow because you just, I've done it this way and it works. Did you feel difficult people to handle or difficult questions to answer when you were getting into kitchen and realizing maybe things are not as measured or as structured, or there's a whole way about it?
I went with an approach
Mm-hmm.
that I don't know anything.
Okay.
That I wanted to explore the world of the restaurants completely from scratch, and then see how my knowledge can help. But I could understand a lot of whys,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't have to use it that much
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning. I just wanted to be a line cook
Right.
and experience the hard work and the fast-paced environment, and
Mm-hmm.
have fun with the other people, come in contact with great ingredients, learn how to process the ingredients,
Mm-hmm.
and all those things.
Yeah, I mean, I really admire like the way. First of all, I admire that you had a passion for something. You went a different route to reach that passion, and mostly what happens is people lose the passion when they get into the process of it, of like
Yeah.
getting there. And first of all, that you could keep the passion to go finish that degree and go to restaurants, and then that the humbling process of like thinking that I don't know anything, I'm gonna go there as a blank slate. And I think that's the best kind of a cook a team can receive, somebody who's just a blank slate, and they can draw their own ideology.
Yeah.
And would you say something from those like days of like academic way of looking at food science, did it help you in your like getting into a restaurant, for example, or the first few years in restaurants?
Yeah, it helped me. It helped me get into, and maybe head chefs that I work with, they were a bit more interested about my profile. That I had already a knowledge around food, and I was eager to get in hands with.
And leading from that, was restaurants the first place you got into fermentation? Like, what was your first interaction with fermentation, or was it something you maybe do back in Greece? What's the cuisine like there? I believe there might be some kind of interaction. So, what's your first contact with fermentation?
So in restaurant was the first time that I came in contact with fermentation
Uh-huh.
and being very aware of it. Then
Mm-hmm.
you start looking back, and coming from a place like Greece, you realize that you have fermented before, and you
Mm-hmm.
have been always surrounded around fermented products. It's just you, like in Greece, you wouldn't really say fermented. It's like part of the culture. Is part of the identity. It's already included. And then
Yeah.
you say, okay, yeah, Greek yogurt is fermented. Yeah, never thought about it. Or the olives that I'm eating every day, or the wine that I've been drinking, but no one really refers to it back home. It's just the base.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I first like being aware about it, came in contact in Copenhagen, like such a big fermentation city, and fermentation was a very big thing when I came here 8 years ago. And yeah, then I start looking back and understanding that my culture has a lot of fermentation inside.
Yeah, it's beautiful, right? How much I think it's also beautiful in a way that how restaurants have bought things like these, which are ancient, which are in our cultures, but they have like somehow given them a rebirth and made it sort of cool. Now, I think it has also negatives to it, but for the large part, it has made something so ancient, like given it a new platform. I think with the younger generations, I think so. And mentioning fermentation, I mean, I cannot not ask you about how was your experience with like David. You work with David Zilber, a book which is now in many restaurants. I know of many home cooks when I travel who also use it because of, I think the approach is very simplistic. Of the way Noma has done it's just broken into like 4 or 5 chapters or 4 or 5 key things. And how was that experience back then? How was the fermentation lab back then when he was there?
It was a great experience being in the fermentation lab of Noma. It also I went there quite young with not so much experience, and suddenly I came in contact with so many things, and I learned about so many things. There is this phrase by philosopher mathematician
Mm-hmm.
Pascal that says that knowledge is like a sphere
Mm-hmm.
where the larger the sphere is, the more the contact with the unknown.
Yeah.
So that's how I felt at Noma, that I got a lot of knowledge, and I realized that there are so many things that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
For me, this phrase sums up my time
Yeah.
there. Working with David Zilber was great. He's a very nice person, first of all, but also a great person to work with, and the way he works really motivates you to work for him. I had some like bad experiences in restaurants that I worked, but I had some good experiences, and like David Zilber was with some simple things, like Friday, Saturday deep cleaning, and then like he had already published the book. He was a very well-known person on the restaurant world and the fermentation world, and he would be next to me with the soapy water and the sponge, brushing the wall. And I was like, okay, like if he's doing it, then I should do it 5 times harder. And then you're really, by small things like this, you are really motivated to work for people like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end, these are these small gestures which, separate good leaders from the not so good ones. Because in the end, cooking, fermentation, all these techniques come down to just knowing a technique and then building around it. It's a whole ball game altogether. But I think also like with my time in Noma, for example, I remember I think the approach of Noma to fermentation, it's very unique in its way because it takes from many cultures, Japan being a big inspiration, but then again it somehow contextualizes it for itself. Like, I don't know, the piso they make or the rice they make is so much appropriate for the culture it is, and not just copying and pasting. So any memories from those times, the recipes that were down there, which you think were the ones you liked, or you still take inspiration from them?
I think it's this thing that you said, that it somehow unlocks something inside you, and then you are able to connect a lot of knowledge. So use a process that's being used for something to another ingredient, to another way. Like, this is what happened to me. It unlocked and opened a lot of possibilities. Realizing how you can work with many kind of products, from seaweed to plant leaves, and from misos to vinegars. Yeah, that somehow there is no there, and there are no borders, but you can do whatever you want as long as there is a very tasty result.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. In the end, taste is the final winner. I think that if that checks, everything has to make sense behind it, right? And during that time at like fermentation at Noma, did you already work with drinks, or like, I mean, I can imagine you're saying 8 years ago, so I don't think, I mean, I think kombucha and stuff was still coming up, but I do not
That
think we
was
still.
that was about 6 years ago.
Uh-huh.
We were doing some kombuchas and kefirs.
Okay. So was it the first time you interacting with these things? Was it Noma which got you to know it, or did you use it before at some other place?
It was a little bit before,
Uh-huh.
when I first came in Copenhagen, and I worked in a restaurant that doesn't exist anymore. And
Uh-huh.
I heard about kombucha. It sounded very interesting. I managed to get some SCOBY, went home, bought a glass jar, and the first time that I was cleaning the glass jar to use it, the glass broke, and I had like a big cut. I still have the wound. Yeah, so I have the sign from my first kombucha trial. Yeah, and I started exploring more, but of course I learned most of the things when I went to Noma.
And then what came next for you? Like, what was it like? Why did you leave it, or like how did that period finish? And then what comes next after being there at that stage, doing fermentation, possibly at a place which has the most resources possible, has a kind of clientele which is ready to try all these things. At that point, Noma is the top of its game. So after that, what was your natural progression from Noma?
So I left when COVID started, and then I was looking for a job, and through a common friend, I found Muri, that
Uh-huh.
has just founded Muri Drinks,
Mm-hmm.
and he was looking for someone with more or less my background to help him develop the drinks. So I joined the beginning of the summer of 2020. He had a bit of a hard time to develop the first drinks with an external consultant company, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
and I joined to develop the two drinks. We had a very limited amount of time. They had already announced that there will be a release party towards the mid of August. So I had 2 months to develop two drinks from the scratch in a walk-in fridge. We were renting a walk-in fridge of a mushroom company that they had turned it off. That's what our production place and office and everything was.
Wow, I think that's one reason maybe Muri was looking for chefs, because I think a challenge like that only a chef can solve. Because if you take somebody who's a microbiologist or somebody who's doing kombucha production,
Yeah.
whatever drink at that stage would would not accept those conditions, and also would not see that as an opportunity, rather than a limitation.
Yeah, I think that's where like sometimes the mindset of a chef works. Like the hard work and the ability to make things happen and make things happen fast when it's needed. Later I also understood that sometimes you need to take things slow and figure out everything, every detail around what you are making, and not just to get it done. It's a balance between these two, but it's nice to have both of them and being able to recognize where you are balancing.
No, I love it. I think the approach, and this is the whole point of the podcast. The idea is that I think most chefs just limit themselves to thinking that, okay, I know how to do this, and that's all I can do. Whereas, I mean, people like you and profiles like you, time and again, prove that this other factor of the mindset of a chef, as you called it correctly, is what at many challenges, at many corporate decisions, and many massive operational decisions makes the difference. And also, again, what you say that I mean, especially with fermentation, with something that's alive, something that is so
Yeah.
sensitive to how clean you are, or how you operate, or I don't know if you're sanitizing your workspace or not. These things can make a difference, and you'll get to know the negative difference 2 months later, where there's no turning around it. There's no way to go back. So I think there is a madness. Chefs give a different approach to that madness, which makes it, I would say, it's a different approach. I wouldn't say it's better or worse, but there has to be a certain method to that madness, right, to make it work. And what's your day to day like, Joachim? Tell us what's your day at Muri Drinks like. For somebody listening to this podcast, what I also want them to understand is that they picture you, so like they've understood you were somebody who did food science and technology, came to Copenhagen, worked at restaurants, worked at a fermentation lab of the best restaurant possible at that point. And then now at Muri Drinks, like, how is your day to day?
So Muri Drinks has grew a lot since the walk-in fridge.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's not anymore like that, but
How was that launch? Sorry, before you go ahead, how was the launch? I would like to know, how did it go for the 2 months?
That was a very fun summer that I think back at it with a smile. We had a great time. Of course, it was a bit stressful that you needed to develop something very fast. So I tried to combine things I knew, ingredients that they were working, maybe try them with a different technique, with a different fermentation process, and we managed to get 2 drinks ready. But I was just thinking to get 2 drinks ready, and I wasn't really thinking of the next step. So the release party was great. We still talk about that party, a beautiful sunny day by the water. But the day after, I needed to start upscaling those 2 recipes, and that was so hard. Upscaling those drinks, it was harder than to develop the 20-30 liters in the beginning, because you use some products that they work, like you take queens from like some shop around the city, but then where can I find 200 kilos of queens every single month? Or I used some geranium leaves. Okay, like where the fuck I'm gonna supply geranium leaves? So it's things like that I had no knowledge about, and learned through the process, learned with a lot of mistakes. Developing a drink now is not only make something for us to try that is tasty, but you need to think about the big process, you need to think about the upscaling, about the availabilities of ingredients, and a lot of things. So that's kind of also maybe brings us to now.
Yeah.
Where Muri is a more established company than the walk-in fridge. that we have several people in the team. We're still a small team. We're not a huge company, but we are very proud that we do everything ourselves. Nothing is being outsourced, and that's like a big difference from other non-alcoholic companies, and we take pride on that. So since we are a small team, it means that even though we have our titles, we will all do all kinds of things as well. So maybe sometimes we all have to help on the production, we will all have to bottle, we will all have to label and make boxes to send to another country. And then of course it's the R&D process, where a part of it is developing new drinks, and part of it is optimizing the current recipes, changing things on the production, make everything better.
Mm. And while you were mentioning, the quince dilemma that you had, look, how do you get that amount? But also, like, I think what I see now in R&D is like, first of all, maybe you can get that amount, but how do you standardize that amount that the produce at the end is somehow standardized? So in that sense, what's the idea of Muri? Like, is it every bottle tastes the same in that flavor, in that name of the flavor, or can vary between bottles?
So one thing is that we're using several fresh ingredients like the quince.
Right.
The second thing is that we use fermentation. So both of them are things that can lead to differences between batch to batch, just like wines, basically. The thing is that we are doing batches much sooner than wines that you do once per year. So yes, there are differences between batches, but we have several ways that we're trying to minimize those differences. And ideally, most of the times when you will try different batches next to each other, you should not really be able to taste differences.
Oh yeah, I mean that's always this fight between craftsmanship and scalability, because at some point it becomes. I mean, the whole point of craftsmanship was making something from scratch, as you said, doing it in a plant. The point of it is that it creates a difference and takes it to a category like wine. How wine has marketed
Yeah.
that as their forte. But again, scaling up is always challenges like this. But Joachim, tell us, like, for somebody who's listening, when you say like in R&D for a new drink, like a new flavor or a new segment of a drink, where does this idea begin? Like, is it like a trend scanning for the future forecasting, like what's going to happen in the industry, or is it something local, something in season? So how does the idea begin for this drink?
Yeah, we haven't been doing that much like
Mm-hmm.
trend scanning or like marketing research. So far, it has been happening very, very pure of like, let's make something that we like. We and our friends like. The challenge here is that most of the times we are trying to create something that doesn't exist, not even exactly on our minds. It's like we don't start by saying, okay, we will make a lemonade.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of like creating music. You start by not knowing where you are going exactly. So then the starting point can be an ingredient that you came in contact with and you really liked. It can be a process, a technique that you know or that you heard and you started working with it. Um, so usually this will be the starting point. Very rare will have a bit flavor profile in our minds.
Okay.
We will start working around it and try different techniques, different methods with this ingredient. Then of course we start realizing from our experience and knowledge what this could go nice with. So then we're like start trying different things. We divide all of our drinks are blends of different components, as we say, and then one of them will act as a base of the drink, and then we will have some others that will give maybe acidity, another one maybe more sweetness and body to the drink, and another one that will give top notes. So each of the component has a specific role on the drink, acts as a different tool to what we want to achieve.
No, it's a super interesting process. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what makes it different from just say a juice company, because at the end, when you want it or not, the people who are looking for alternatives to say looking for some no alcohol or low alcohol beverage are looking for something which is equally complex when it comes to flavor, equally complements, say, food, because food pairing is a big category for the wine business. So I think it makes sense that the process has to be equally intriguing, equal amount of different flavors. The complexity of it has to be very similar
Yeah.
to its competition, you know?
Yeah, oh, we actually don't really focus on the non-alcoholic part of it.
Uh-huh.
Like in an ideal world, for me at least, the first reason that you choose to have our drinks is not because they are non-alcoholic, but because you believe that they are very tasty, delicious. And maybe the second, third reason is that they are non-alcoholic as well. But in my ideal world, you chose Muri drinks because you think it's a very tasty drink, not for its alcohol content. Because you are like, you saw it and you are craving to drink something like that, to try something like that. So yes, it is non-alcoholic, but we also like alcohol. We enjoy alcohol. We are not against it. So we don't see it just with the mindset of the non-alcoholic glasses. We see it with the mindset of let's create something interesting and delicious, and that you would be very happy to bring on a dinner party and say, look, what I found is this drink that is this and this, and it's made this way. Like you have something to talk about the craft, about the ingredient, about the team behind, or yeah.
No, that's a great approach, I think. I think the way you've mentioned it, I think that's going to be the future of bringing more honest, sincere products to the market, of like believing in the product for what it is, and people should choose it for what it is rather than for what it is not. So I think that's a great, great philosophy behind the way you've expressed it. And attached to that question, how do you see the segment? Because there's been a lot of talks about it. There's a lot of investment into this segment. There are bigger companies. There are also like the classic companies turning into this business. How do you see it for somebody who's into the business? I bet you are like reading about it. You're tasting your competitors. How do you see, especially like firstly on Copenhagen level, because I think there are many brands which have made it big out there, and then on a bigger scale of things.
Yeah, it's a market that is growing. I think in the beginning we saw a lot of products that the quality was not good. Also, starting with the beers, maybe it was first the non-alcoholic beers that the quality was very bad, and now there are great non-alcoholic beers. So I think we're gonna see more and more products, and we're gonna see better quality. I think we are already seeing the alternatives of the alcohol. So, like we saw the non-alcoholic beer, the non-alcoholic wine, the non-alcoholic spritz, the non-alcoholic gin and tonic. Like, I think we are getting a bit full of the alternatives, but I think now we're gonna see more and more of like new independent things, hybrid, completely new, like.
Super interesting. I mean, yeah, the future looks very promising, and very looking forward to try all these things that are gonna come out of. Because I think at one point also the early adopters, the market itself, does get tired of this kind of perspective of just creating something similar and taking the alcohol away. So I think the
Yeah.
approach that you mentioned, and also like I was looking through the website, I've been following Moody drinks, the kind of products that are coming out, and I think all of them stand out for what they are, and they are, yeah, things that just by the flavors, the names that it appeals to you. It's something you would like to, yeah, you could crave it at some point.
Something that we see a lot also lately on the non-alcoholic sector is the functional drinks and drinks with non-alcoholic drinks with health benefits. Some like probiotics, and yeah, that is something that is growing a lot lately and focusing on that. But I'm very happy that Muri is focusing purely on flavor.
Yeah, I think it's again, yeah, function. What you mentioned, it's, I mean, we saw the biggest news coming out of how Pepsi bought Poppy, and that became a big
Yeah.
news, and then Olipop and all these brands which are, yeah, doing in that segment. Also, bigger players getting into it. It could look like a little bit dangerous for the smaller players, but I think it also opens up the door to the bigger masses to be able to access these things, which are at the end low in sugar, low in all the things we want to avoid in a healthier diet. And then again, somebody like Muri, or like a brand like Muri, having a philosophy of, chasing one aspect of that segment. And I think there's enough market to explode just in that niche that one chooses, But yeah, moving on a little bit away from Muri and more into you. I loved how you mentioned how music creation happens and how that's attached to how beverage creation happens at work, you know. But tell us about, because I was reading about you. You're into funk music and things like that. Does that play a little bit element into creativity or fermentation? Because fermentation and funk have been, I think there was a time it was a pop culture as well, gastronomy, fermentation.
Yeah,
How does that play into your daily, you know, choices?
I think, like you mentioned, the fact of creativity. I don't think it's something that you can just have on your work and select when to enable it, but it's more of a way of life that you need to enable it in your whole being, on your whole living. Yes, related with music. I really like music. I like all kinds of music. I'm playing a bit of saxophone. Still on, I have a long learning curve to go. But yeah, I'm trying to implement creativity in my daily life.
Yeah, I think it had all shapes and forms, and I think every art somehow, consciously, subconsciously, you do take away at least from the culture. If not, I mean, saxophone, literally, you can't bring it into and produce a drink from it, but the culture around it, the way people are creative in the music industry, many times all these multidisciplinary approaches are what bring out the unexpected sort of creativity, you know. And like more diving into you as a person, how about like your upbringing, your culture back home in Greece? Does that have like some role into your today's kind of, I don't know, food choices or kind of beverages you make? Are there like, how much part does your upbringing, nostalgia, emotion, whatever you call it, of that culture plays, you know, in today's
No, I
work, I would
like.
say.
I feel all those years and like working in Copenhagen and working with fermentation. Even though I'm away from Greece,
Mm-hmm.
it somehow connected me more to my culture and made me more interested to know more about my culture in Greece. As we said, like with the example of fermentation, that then I realized that I've been always surrounded by fermented products in Greece, and we have always been making them in Greece. Or like for aging becoming a trend, and then I was like, okay, yeah, my grandmother like was going all the time to like pick oregano and things like that. It's just my time here, and whatever I do, whatever I learn, it connects me more to my culture in Greece and makes me interested to learn more about it, to dive about botanicals that have been used since very old times in Greek cuisine and in Greek tradition. Then looking about books to read regarding this thing. Um, yeah, it's like an interesting back and forth with the two cultures, the
Yeah.
new modern here and the identity in Greece.
Super interesting. I think, yeah, always, I think I mean, the grass always looks greener on the other side, and the same happens to me. You know, 6 years of not going back to India. I went back like a few months ago, and then you realize how much of what you don't value is being valued, especially in Europe. Everybody's, oh, you're from India, you know this, you know that, and the same I think happens when you go out of your culture, step out of it, and you see behind, and you feel, okay, there's so much out there to be taken inspiration from, to be contributed to bring back over here. So yeah, I'm glad you were,
Yeah,
yeah, looking into it.
and it gives you more excitement and thirst to go back and re-explore your roots. At least it's something that I want to do at
Yeah.
some point.
No, we really hope. I mean, I have tasted, I've had the privilege to taste many of these herbs, especially all the beach herbs like that grow in Greece, which are very particular to Greece, all the coastal range of herbs and things that they use in their oils and concoctions. And I think, yeah, it would be really interesting if you can bring it into the drinks, you know, at the end of the day.
You read about heard for the first time hear
Mm-hmm.
about the garums, started reading
Uh-huh.
about garums, and then realized that they've been making some sort of garums in the ancient Greece.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was like, wow.
Yeah, there's always a lot to look back. And Joachim, tell us if there's something that you're really excited about the moment. It could be at work, it could be around the scenario, it could be where you're living. Something that you're excited that keeps you driving.
I'm excited about this growing phase of Muri and trying to become more established. And we are working with some interesting ingredients. We'll try to release some more products soon. But I'm also very excited for like personal projects that I would like to do in the near future, like exploring more some part of my roots that we discussed earlier, and doing some traveling around the world to expand my knowledge and learn more things.
And how do you see Copenhagen for that context? Because I remember the time I lived there. I mean, it has been in the place in the news. It has been after the whole revival of the new Nordic cuisine. It's always been, there's been ups and downs. I mean, COVID also didn't affect it because brands like Muri and others, which are around the restaurant system, grew up. How do you see it right now as a platform for somebody who has ideas? Is it still as alive as we heard about it a few years ago?
Yeah, it's still alive, and I think the great thing here is that there is a space for new ideas to be born here.
Mm-hmm.
I think this whole new Nordic movement somehow happened because there are not strong food. There's no strong food culture from the past in Copenhagen, in Denmark, the way it is in Spain, in Italy, in France, in Greece, in India. That you cannot really. There is a very strong food culture. You cannot really mess with it. You cannot really mess with traditions. But here, there is nothing from the past, nothing that holds you back. You can do whatever new you like, and the city will be supportive. So that's the great thing of Copenhagen, that I think this flame is still burning, and it makes it a very fertile soil for new ideas to be born here.
Yeah, I think also, like, especially for all the outsiders, I think, I know Matt Orlando coming from Australia, Rene himself coming with a North Macedonian, Albanian background. Also, like, it's been a great stage, not just for Danish people. I mean, I think Danish people have made it big out there, but also the outsiders. I think Copenhagen has been a great starting platform for these super unique projects, and people have been very receiving.
Yeah, even though it's a small city, I think it's a very international city. It connects people from all around the world, and that's a beautiful part of it. And all these cultures can be mixed. All these ideas can come together. That's very beautiful.
Yeah. I definitely miss my days back there, and yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad to hear that it's still the place that I remember. And Joachim, to wrap this up, anything that you would like to share with people listening? Because the idea of this podcast, as I told you again, I will repeat, is that people who are in restaurants, people who are, or maybe thinking of getting into restaurants, or thinking that, you know what, I look at restaurants, I look at the life in there, I don't want to be in there, but I want to be in the food industry. What would you say to people like that who want to take like the path like yours?
I think there are so many paths around food that we like. Even us, we don't really know them all. Like there are so many things around food, around cooking. It's not just the restaurants and the service. So just go out there, explore it, read about it, listen to podcasts like yours, and like see all the different approaches you can have around food, and trying to feel what suits you best.
I think, yeah, that's a great way to wrap it up. And you, with this podcast, with this episode, have been a great inspiration as well by adding this different approach of entering through academics, getting into restaurants, learning fermentation thanks to the restaurant industry, and then coming and using it into the food industry. So yeah, Joachim, thank you so much for your time. It's been a beautiful 1 hour that I shared with you, listening to your story.
Thank you for the time.
I honestly can't wait to not just see all that's going to happen in Muri Drinks, but also the projects that you mentioned with the connection with Greece. I can't wait to hear more about it.
Thanks so much for having me.